Ladies and gentlemen, today we stand witness to a moment that history will not forget, a moment where India, with unshakable confidence and strategic brilliance, has taken a daring step that has left even the most powerful nation in the world, America, speechless. India's bold stand on the global stage is more than just a political maneuver. It is a statement of identity, resilience, and unshakable confidence. For decades, the world order was largely dictated by the power and influence of the West, particularly the United States. Decisions taken in Washington reverberated across continents, shaping the economies, politics, and security structures of countless nations. Yet, in recent times, India has shown that it is no longer a country that merely reacts to global decisions. It is a nation that dares to set its own agenda. This willingness to stand tall, even when under immense pressure, is what makes India's position so significant and historic. When a nation as powerful as the United States finds itself unable to dictate terms to India, it speaks volumes about how far India has come. The boldness does not lie in arrogance or aggression, but in the clarity of vision that India now possesses. It is the recognition that sovereignty is non-negotiable, that decisions made in New Delhi are guided not by external pressure, but by the aspirations of 1.4 billion citizens. This stand is rooted in principle rather than expediency, and that is why it has caught the attention of the world. The United States, accustomed to influencing allies and adversaries alike, has been forced to pause and reassess its approach toward India, a pause that reflects India's growing strength. India's boldness is also reflected in its economic choices. At a time when global markets are fragile and nations scramble for security guarantees, India has charted its own course. It has signed trade agreements, forged new partnerships, and invested in sectors that ensure long-term independence rather than short-term dependency. This economic confidence underlines the larger message. India is not a follower of the world order, it is a shaper of it. America, for all its resources and influence, is witnessing a country that cannot be swayed by threats or promises, a nation that knows exactly what it stands for. The diplomatic arena has been another platform where India's boldness shines, whether it is maintaining relations with the United States while also engaging Russia or balancing ties with Western powers while deepening connections with the global South. India has displayed extraordinary strategic independence. This is not the diplomacy of appeasement, but of assertion. It is a signal to the world that India will not be cornered into choosing sides that compromise its interests. Instead, it chooses the path that safeguards its sovereignty and amplifies its global voice. For America, used to seeing countries align under pressure, this has been a surprising demonstration of true independence. At the heart of this boldness lies the spirit of the Indian people, a nation that has endured colonization, struggled for independence, and emerged as one of the fastest growing economies cannot afford to be timid. The collective memory of India's resilience empowers its leaders to reject dictates, however powerful the source may be. The courage of India's stand today is the reflection of centuries of perseverance, sacrifices, and unwavering faith in self-determination. It is this spirit that leaves America and the rest of the world momentarily speechless. The global message from India's daring posture is simple yet profound. Strength is not measured only in missiles or dollars, but in the ability to say no when it matters most. It is about defending principles, protecting sovereignty, and prioritizing national interests above all else. For America, this is a wake-up call that the era of unquestioned dominance is over, and for the rest of the world, it is an inspiration that boldness rooted in dignity can shift the global balance. India's stand today is not just bold, it is historic, and it will echo across generations as a defining moment of true independence on the world stage. The end of Western monopoly in global affairs is not a sudden event, but the result of decades of change, and India has emerged as one of the central forces driving this transformation. For centuries, global politics, economics, and even cultural narratives were dominated by Western powers. The United States, after the Second World War, stood as the undisputed leader of a world shaped by its economic strength, military superiority, and strategic alliances. For many countries, Aligning with Washington was not just a choice, but almost a necessity. Yet the world of today is not the same, and India's rise has accelerated the erosion of that monopoly, signaling the birth of a new multipolar world order. The monopoly of the West was built upon the assumption that no other nation could challenge its authority, whether in decision-making at the United Nations, the shaping of global trade rules, or the control of international finance. But India has consistently shown that it will not be confined to the role of a silent observer. By refusing to bow to pressure, by questioning narratives, and by taking independent positions, India has proven that global influence is no longer concentrated in the West. Its actions make it clear that the world has moved past the time when a single bloc of nations could dictate terms to everyone else. One of the most striking aspects of this shift is the way India has handled global conflicts and crises. Instead of blindly aligning with the West, India has adopted a pragmatic and balanced approach, choosing to act in its own best interests. This independent stance has baffled Washington and other Western capitals, which are used to compliance rather than confidence from countries outside their sphere. By engaging with multiple powers, be it the United States, Russia, Europe, or the global South, India has placed itself at the center of global dialogue, breaking the illusion that the West alone can control the narrative. Economically, too, the decline of Western monopoly is visible. For years, the West enjoyed unquestioned dominance over technology, trade, and markets. Today, India stands as one of the fastest growing major economies, attracting investment, creating innovation hubs, and offering an alternative to Western models of development. The rise of India's digital economy, its massive infrastructure push, and its ability to provide affordable solutions to global challenges showcase a path that is not dependent on Western approval. This economic self-reliance is a direct challenge to the monopoly that once defined global finance and commerce. Culturally and ideologically, the cracks in Western dominance are even more apparent. India, with its ancient civilization and deeply rooted traditions, has reminded the world that leadership is not only about wealth or weapons, but about values, resilience, and diversity. Western countries often promoted their systems as the only legitimate path to progress, but India's success has shown that development can take many forms. A democratic system that functions uniquely, a society that balances modernity with tradition, and a voice that emphasizes inclusivity. All these make India a role model for nations that wish to grow without surrendering their identity to Western templates. The end of Western monopoly is not a defeat of the West, but the rise of balance, fairness, and equality in global affairs. For America and its allies, it is a reality check that influence cannot be permanent unless it is shared. For India, it is a victory earned through courage, vision, and consistent determination to remain independent. This is why India's bold steps today resonate so strongly across the globe. They represent the dawn of an era where no single nation or group of nations holds unchecked power. Instead, the world is moving toward multipolarity, and India is among the key architects of this transformation. The Western monopoly is fading, and in its place rises a more balanced order, an order where India's voice cannot be ignored. Strength from principles is a force that outlasts weapons, wealth, and even empires. While military power may intimidate and economic dominance may impress, it is moral conviction and adherence to values that truly inspire respect and ensure lasting influence. India's rise on the global stage is not defined merely by the size of its economy or the strength of its army, but by the principles it refuses to abandon. This is what makes its journey so remarkable, the ability to hold on to dignity and sovereignty even in the face of immense pressure from powerful nations like the United States. Throughout history, nations that compromised their principles for short-term benefits often found themselves weakened in the long run. India, however, has chosen a different path. Its stand is not about blind defiance, but about clarity of vision. By putting principles above pressure, India has shown that true strength lies in making decisions that serve the people and preserve national honor, even when those decisions may not align with the desires of the world's most influential powers. The ability to say no when everyone expects a yes is not an act of arrogance, it is an act of courage rooted in principle. This strength is most visible in India's approach to sovereignty at a time when global powers attempt to impose their models of governance, economy, or foreign policy on others. India has made it clear that it will not be dictated to. Every decision, from trade to defense to diplomacy, is guided by what benefits its citizens and safeguards its independence. This unwavering commitment is what leaves even superpowers like America speechless. They are not used to nations standing tall with such confidence, yet India has done so consistently, earning global admiration. The principle of balance has also guided India's foreign policy. While the West might prefer India to act as a loyal ally, New Delhi has instead chosen to maintain strategic independence. It has engaged with Washington where interests align, but it has also preserved strong ties with Russia, deepened relations with Asian neighbors, and strengthened its role in the global South. This balanced diplomacy is not opportunism. It is principle in action. India believes in dialogue with all, dependence on none, and partnerships that respect equality. By holding on to this belief, it has demonstrated that strength comes not from choosing sides, but from standing firm on its own. Another core principle that defines India's strength is its belief in democracy and inclusivity. While critics often highlight the challenges of managing diversity in a vast country of 1.4 billion people, India has embraced that diversity as a strength rather than a weakness. Its democratic institutions, its freedom of debate, and its respect for multiple voices reflect a principle that true progress cannot be achieved by silencing dissent. This principle resonates deeply with nations across the world that aspire to grow while preserving their cultural and political uniqueness. America, which often projected itself as the sole champion of democracy, has been forced to recognize that India too represents a model of democratic resilience. India's economic journey is also guided by principles. Unlike many nations that became dependent on foreign aid or external dictates, India has prioritized self-reliance and innovation. Its initiatives in renewable energy, digital technology, and infrastructure are not just about growth, but about building a future that is sustainable and independent. This principle-driven development shows the world that progress can be achieved without surrendering sovereignty. It is a lesson that smaller nations, often pressured by Western powers, can look to with hope. Strength from principles carries a moral weight that sheer power never can. It inspires trust among allies, respect among rivals, and admiration among neutral observers. India's refusal to compromise its dignity, its sovereignty, and its independence has made it a global force that commands attention not through intimidation, but through respect. For America and the West, accustomed to nations bending under pressure, India's principled stand is both a surprise and a challenge. It signals that a new era has begun, an era where true strength is not measured in domination but in the courage to stay true to one's principles. This is the kind of strength that shapes history, and India embodies it fully. Global recognition is not something that can be demanded, bought, or imposed. It is earned through consistency, resilience, and actions that prove a nation's worth on the world stage. For years, India was often seen as a developing country struggling to find its place in the hierarchy of international power. Today, however, the situation has changed dramatically. India is no longer a silent participant in global discussions. It is a decisive voice that the world listens to. This transformation is not an accident. It is the product of a long journey of sacrifice, vision, and bold choices that have propelled India into the center of global recognition. One of the primary reasons for India's growing recognition is its economic rise. In just a few decades, India has transformed from a largely agrarian economy into one of the fastest growing major economies in the world. It is a hub for technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, producing solutions that are affordable and effective for both developing and developed nations. This economic power is not just about numbers, it is about the confidence it gives India to stand tall in global forums. When India speaks about trade, climate change, or digital innovation, the world pays attention because it knows that India is not just making promises, it is delivering results. Another dimension of this recognition is India's strategic importance. Situated in South Asia, with access to critical sea routes and a vast population, India is a natural leader in its region and an essential partner in global security. The West, including the United States, recognizes that India's cooperation is vital in maintaining balance in Asia, especially in the face of rising competition from China. This geopolitical significance has placed India at the center of major global alliances, from the Quad to the BRICS. The ability to engage with multiple power blocks without losing independence reflects not only strategy, but the recognition of India's indispensable role. India's recognition also stems from its diplomatic approach. Unlike many nations that choose confrontation or submission, India has mastered the art of dialogue. It engages with rivals and allies alike, ensuring that its voice is one of balance and stability. For instance, while maintaining strong ties with the United States, India has not severed its long-standing relationship with Russia. At the same time, it builds bridges with nations in Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, representing the aspirations of the global South. This inclusive diplomacy gives India a moral authority that few nations can claim, making it a recognized leader for both developed and developing countries. Beyond economics and diplomacy, India's cultural influence has also added to its global recognition. Yoga, Ayurveda, cinema, cuisine, and literature have spread across continents, creating a soft power that complements its hard power. The Indian diaspora spread across the world acts as a bridge between cultures and strengthens India's image globally. This cultural reach ensures that India is not just seen as a country of numbers, but as a civilization that enriches the world with its heritage and values. Recognition built on culture is deeper than political agreements because it touches people's lives directly. India's role in addressing global challenges has further solidified its position. From sending vaccines to countries during the pandemic to championing renewable energy initiatives like the International Solar Alliance, India has shown that it is not only concerned with its own growth, but with the well-being of the world. This willingness to contribute to global solutions earns respect far beyond political alliances. It shows the world that India is not a passive actor, but a responsible leader with a vision for humanity's collective future. The recognition India enjoys today is a result of its courage to make bold decisions and its determination to stand on principle. The West, particularly the United States, has been forced to acknowledge that India is not a country that can be sidelined or pressured into submission. Instead, it is a partner that must be treated with respect, a nation whose voice cannot be ignored. Global recognition is about more than status. It is about influence, respect, and trust. India has earned all three, and as the world continues to evolve, this recognition will only grow stronger. India is no longer rising, it has risen, and the world sees it clearly. A message of respect is more powerful than any show of force, and India's actions in recent years have sent exactly that kind of message to the world. In a global environment often dominated by competition, coercion, and pressure, India has chosen to build its position on dignity and fairness. This approach has left a strong impression not just on its allies and partners, but even on those who once tried to dictate terms to it. India is demonstrating that respect is not something that can be demanded, it must be earned, and it must also be given. This balance of self-respect and mutual respect is what makes India's stance so unique and admirable on the international stage. When America, a nation long accustomed to commanding obedience from others, finds itself speechless before India, it is because India does not engage with arrogance but with principle. It does not bow to pressure, yet it does not seek to humiliate or dominate in return. Instead, India insists on being treated as an equal partner. That demand for equality is a message of respect, first for itself and then for others. By showing that dignity cannot be compromised, India has made it clear that true partnerships must be built on balance, not hierarchy. India's message of respect extends to how it handles global alliances. While many countries fall into patterns of dependency, aligning completely with one bloc or another, India has charted its own course. It cooperates with the United States when interests align, maintains strong ties with Russia despite Western disapproval, and engages actively with developing nations that often feel ignored by the global powers. This willingness to listen to all sides and to act independently sends a signal to the world. India respects the sovereignty of others because it demands the same in return. This principle has resonated deeply with countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, who see India as a voice that understands their struggles and aspirations. Domestically, too, India's resilience strengthens this message of respect. A nation of 1.4 billion people with hundreds of languages, religions, and cultures has shown the world how diversity can be managed not as a weakness, but as a strength. By protecting democratic traditions, empowering debate, and embracing cultural differences, India has earned admiration across borders. This domestic example reinforces its global voice, proving that respect at home leads to respect abroad. Nations watch India and realize that unity can be built on inclusion, not suppression, and that leadership can emerge from listening, not commanding. Respect also comes from responsibility, and India has embraced its responsibility toward global challenges. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when many countries hoarded resources, India provided vaccines and medical aid to nations in need. In the fight against climate change, India has led initiatives like the International Solar Alliance, promoting renewable energy for all. These actions go beyond self-interest. They are a recognition that global leadership means caring for others. This sense of responsibility earns respect not because it is demanded, but because it is demonstrated through deeds that benefit humanity as a whole. Even in its disagreements with powerful nations, India communicates respect. When it refuses to bend to Western pressure, it does not do so with hostility, but with firmness and clarity. It asserts its sovereignty without resorting to insults or aggression. This diplomatic maturity sets India apart from nations that either submit entirely or retaliate recklessly. It proves that one can stand tall and remain principled while still upholding civility and mutual respect. America, used to nations reacting in extremes, finds in India a partner that balances strength with grace, independence with diplomacy. The core of India's message is simple yet profound. Respect is mutual. If you treat India as an equal, you will find a partner of integrity, resilience, and trustworthiness. If you attempt to undermine it, you will be met with unyielding strength rooted in self-respect. This is a lesson not only for America, but for the entire international community. India's example shows that in a world striving for fairness, respect is the most valuable currency of all. And it is this currency that India has invested in generously, earning recognition, admiration, and influence on the global stage. The message is clear: India respects others, but it will never compromise the respect it has for itself. The shifting balance of power in today's world is perhaps the most defining feature of our era, and India stands at the heart of this transformation. For decades, the United States and its Western allies dominated global affairs, setting the rules of trade, security, and diplomacy. Theirs was a world shaped by unilateral influence, where the rest of the globe had little choice but to follow. That era, however, is coming to an end. A new reality is emerging, one where multiple powers share influence, where no single nation dictates the course of humanity, and where India is a central force shaping this balance. The balance of power is shifting not just because America is weakening, but because other nations are rising. Among them, India's rise is especially significant. With a population of 1.4 billion, a booming economy, and a rapidly advancing technological sector, India represents both a regional heavyweight and a global powerhouse. The world can no longer ignore its voice. Every time India makes an independent decision, whether on trade, defense, or diplomacy, it adds weight to this new multipolar order. It shows that international authority is no longer concentrated in one capital, but is distributed among diverse and independent players. One of the clearest examples of this shift is how India engages with major powers. While the United States wants India as a close ally to counterbalance China, India has refused to be anyone's pawn. It strengthens relations with Washington when interests align, but it also maintains deep ties with Russia and expands cooperation with countries in the global south. This refusal to conform to the binary choices offered by Western powers is a direct demonstration of the shifting balance. It proves that nations no longer have to fit neatly into Western-designed categories of ally or adversary. Instead, they can act independently, shaping global outcomes on their own terms. Economically, the balance of power is shifting toward Asia, and India is at the forefront of this trend. As Western economies slow down under the weight of aging populations and mounting debt, India's growth continues to accelerate. It is becoming a hub for global investment, technology, and innovation by creating its own digital economy, advancing renewable energy, and building large-scale infrastructure projects. India is showing that the future of economic power will not be dictated solely by the West. This transition is forcing America and its allies to reconsider their strategies as they realize that global prosperity increasingly depends on cooperation with emerging economies like India. The military and security dimensions of this balance cannot be overlooked either. While the United States still maintains the world's most powerful military, its ability to unilaterally shape conflicts has declined. India, on the other hand, has steadily modernized its defense capabilities while emphasizing regional stability and security. Its role in the Indo-Pacific, its participation in strategic dialogues, and its leadership in counter-terrorism efforts make it a pivotal player in maintaining peace and balance. The message is clear: no global security architecture can succeed without India's active participation. Culturally and ideologically, the shift is equally visible. For decades, Western powers projected their values as universal, expecting others to follow. Today, India challenges that monopoly by showing that there are multiple paths to progress. Its ability to combine tradition with modernity, democracy with diversity, and sovereignty with global responsibility offers the world an alternative model of leadership. This ideological balance is crucial because it ensures that the future will not be defined by a single worldview, but by the coexistence of many. The shifting balance of power is not about the decline of one nation and the rise of another. It is about the creation of a fairer, more multipolar world. In this world, the United States may remain powerful, but it is no longer unquestioned. India's bold decisions, principled stance, and growing influence prove that it is no longer a passive participant, but an active architect of global change. The age of unilateral dominance is giving way to an era of shared power, and India is one of the defining forces of this new reality. The balance has shifted, and the world must now adjust to a future where India's voice is not just heard but respected and followed.